Now, at 3 years of age, our next guest saw the woman she knew as her mother walk away and leave her in one of the country's most notorious industrial schools.
Having spent most of her young life there, she decided at the age of 16 to find out the truth about the woman who had left her behind and discover her own identity along the way. She has detailed her experience in her book, Annie's Girl. Maureen Coppinger joins us now. Good morning, Maureen. You're very welcome. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very
much. You live in Canada, by and large. I don't know how aware you are of the Ryan report and indeed the kind of the convulsion the country has been going through as a result of the report, and it obviously included a lot of stuff about industrial schools and how children were treated there. Your book isn't about the treatment that you had in that industrial school, although it is a part of it. Your book is about your identity and finding your roots and finding out what happened with your mother and basically why she abandoned you.
Yeah, the first part is
okay,
mostly in the orphanage and how I found my mother. But that didn't happen till I was 21.
Because you
in England. This is when I first had the gentleman take me back that I was going with, a boyfriend. And he was 10 years older than me. And at that time he was doing very well in business, and he always see the restless side in me. So one day he said, I'm going to take you back to find your family.
Can we take you back to
yes.
Your earliest memory is 3
years when I went in.
When you went in. And is that still vividly etched in your mind?
Very much so.
What do you remember,
I
Maureen?
remember the detail of my coat that I wore, black and white checkered coat. I remember walking, I close my eyes and I can still see, walking among the flowers, holding a nun's hand. I want my mammy, I want my mammy. But I had no face. I couldn't put a face to anything. It was just...
So you don't remember the person who brought you there?
No, no. I could not remember her at all. But I just remember being taken away and the trauma of the whole thing.
And the school that you were taken to it was in...
Newtown Forbes.
That's Longford or Roscommon?
3 miles from Longford, yeah.
And a parcel arrived some years later while you were still in the orphanage, which gave you hope that your mother was still out there and still cared about you.
Yes, all those years I was waiting, just waiting for someone to call me to come to the parlour. You have a visitor, Maureen, you know, that all of a sudden I was called up, and I remember saying, no, I don't have a mammy. And she said, come up here, you do, and this parcel is from your mother. Well, that changed I felt I was no longer an orphan. It was just such a wonderful feeling, and it gave me so much hope. And
we'll get on to that lady now in a second, because there's another aspect as well. Is the call to the parlour could mean one of 2 things. It could mean either a visit from a family member, or it could also mean that prospective adoptive parents were coming.
Yes.
Now, you never got the call for that, though, did you?
No.
But people that you were friendly with in the orphanage did, and basically were homed.
Yeah.
And you felt that there was something wrong with you, or that you didn't fit, you weren't pretty enough, or you weren't...
I was in a circle, actually, to be adopted. I was in that circle, and there were teachers from Clonfad, and they came and inspected us all, and we turned around, looked at us up and down. It was just awful.
Like they were buying something off the shelf?
It was just awful.
I'm sure that wasn't their intention, but...
It wasn't, no, but...
How old were you
My
then,
best
Maureen?
friend was adopted.
And how old were you at that stage?
I was 10.
You were 10 and people were looking you up and down and inspecting you.
Yes.
And your best friend was taken away.
And she was shocked. She was beautiful. And
so were you, by the way. We have shots of you. You were a strikingly beautiful young woman.
Thank you.
Well, we have. I've gone through the book and I've seen them.
Oh, look at that when I was 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just come back from Mullingar. That was the first time I'd ever left the orphanage. And the nun said, stand there now and I'll take a picture of you. And I was so nervous, hanging on the bush, I remember, you know.
What was your experience of the school and how you were treated there?
Oh, they were terrible, terrible things that went on. But there were also 3 or 4 kind nuns that showed me that there was some kindness out there. And
well, when you say terrible, you mean terribly harsh, terribly strict?
The beatings occurred from the time I was very small. Like the book opens when I'm on the table and I'm being beaten across the legs.
For what?
I didn't know my religious, didn't answer the proper religion, you know, question. I didn't know my psalms. And they said, you stay back here. They dismissed the class, and myself and Breda, we were put up on the table and beaten across the legs, not the hands, just for about 10 minutes.
Gosh.
Okay, let's fast forward again. I know we're jumping all over the place here, but
Yes.
we have a whole lifetime to try and get into
Yeah.
a few short minutes. The parcel that you received came from a woman by the name of Mrs. Hughes.
Yes.
Now, that gave you hope that your mother was out there and that she cared for you. You weren't on your own. So when did you actually get to meet Mrs. Hughes?
At the
Finally.
age of 14, when she asked to take me out on a holiday. She wanted me out for 3 weeks in Mullingar,
And
and
you
that was
met her?
my first time.
But you believed her to be your mother.
Of course,
you thought
the
she was
nuns
your mother.
told me.
So the nuns told you that she was your mother?
Yeah, they said, come up here, you have a parcel from your mammy. And of course, I didn't question, none of us would question.
And when you met her, did you feel instinctively that she was your mother, or was there a doubt in
I
it?
felt a warm connection with her, really right away. She was elderly, very stooped, and it didn't matter. She was my mother. I didn't care what she looked like.
So
She was
when did
somebody
you
who wanted
learn?
you.
As long as somebody wanted me, and that's all I ever wanted.
When did you learn that she wasn't your mother?
Not until I was leaving for England. She said, sit down, and we sat by the fire, and she said to me, I have something to tell you, Maureen, I'm not your mother. And I went, who is my mother? Where is she, you know? And then she started to tell me that my mother gave me up at birth when I was born. They were elderly, they had no family, and we loved you. She said, we loved you so much. And I was so happy to hear something about myself. But then I said, what was my mother's name? And she said, Annie Hart. And I said, the same name as me. You know, I was thrilled to belong, to have somebody.
And did she tell you why your mother gave you up?
Because she couldn't afford to keep me. She had no money.
And was she a single mother?
Yes.
Okay, now we're talking in the 30s.
Yeah.
And that would, of course, have been a
Very frowned upon,
very
yeah.
hard time to
Yeah.
have a child out of wedlock. Or,
and in rural Ireland, and in that
Yes.
part of rural Ireland.
and her parents, my grandparents, died when she was 14.
So she was on her own.
And she was completely on her own. She had 5 brothers. 2 of them died also from TB, and my mother nursed her father, and it was just terribly sad, the Hart family, a lot of very tragic.
But
Well,
at the same time, it gave you a sense of completeness, knowing about your family and knowing your mother. And
You have no idea what it was like for not to know where you're from. And that part, I didn't care what she looked like. She was my mother, you know. I can't explain that feeling. It was just wonderful.
Maureen, we don't want to spoil, I suppose, the punchline or the end of the story. But it's suffice to say, and we'll leave what happened with your mother and where that story went for people to read the book. But suffice to say, you did meet a wonderful man from Galway, and you've raised a lovely family.
Married 50 good years.
And you've got a lovely family.
Yes,
And grandchildren.
3 lovely sons, and family here in Dublin, Pauline and Marie, cousins. And I have 2 lovely grandchildren, and one of them is here with me now. They're all very supportive.
And you still live in Canada and have a great
And I
had a
still
great
live
life
in
there.
Canada. I'm very involved with the Irish community over there, and I love Canada and everything about it. And I love coming back to Ireland. I do.
Well, that's nice to hear that, because given your experiences, it would be understandable if you felt, you know what, I've had enough of this place, I don't want to see it again. But I'm glad to hear that you don't feel
I
like
never felt
Well,
that
if people
way.
want to find out more about your story, Maureen, they can read your book, Annie's Girl, which is available now. Thank you very much for coming in today. It's been a pleasure to meet you.